Navy.
Nice.
I went in to the Navy 2 weeks after I graduated, less than 2 weeks after I graduated from high school. I had been wanting to, for years, I think 2 or 3 years anyway, go into the Navy. And I had to get my parents' signatures, both of them, on the enlistment papers because I was under 18. I was 17 and 9 months. 17.
Your birthday's in September.
Yeah, and this was June, and I went in 26 June 61. Anyway, I didn't want to go to school anymore, so I didn't want to go to college. So it's one of the reasons I went in the Navy. The other one was, of course, as Lois always says, I joined the Navy to see the world, and they showed it to me. Anyway, I went in San Diego recruit training depot, which was nice weather, and I spent about eight weeks. I can't even remember how long boot camp was. About 8 weeks down there, training, going to classrooms and going through the tear gas chambers and a little bit of everything. Just
was Vietnam going on still?
It was still, it had already started.
Okay.
It started in, I think, 58 or 59 actually, okay. But yeah, 1961 is when I went in, and after boot camp, this is my boot camp picture, in case anybody wants to find. Anyway, I didn't want to go to college. It's one of the reasons I joined the Navy. Okay, so they sent me to school 8 hours a day for like 6 weeks. Same subject. I didn't even get to change subject. It was all electronics. So they were teaching all the equipment that I was going to be working on for my rate on board ship. So I learned all kinds of stuff.
And that was based on a test you had taken that you scored high in that field?
I scored high enough in math, and at least math, a lot of math and electronics. So, but yeah, I was guaranteed, I think, before I went in to get into something in the technical field. But I, of course, at the time didn't know, and you don't always get what they promise. So I did though. So. But so after I graduated from the A school, it was ICA school, which was IC was my rate, interior communications electrician. We repaired all the onboard communication equipment and alarm systems, all the monitoring, any kind of monitoring systems that were done. We did them. So my first assignment after the school, one interesting thing, at school, I went to the theater one day to see Gone with the Wind. Ooh. It was fairly new. After about 2 hours, the reel stopped. I got up and was headed out. And then, hey, the thing started back up again. What's the deal on this? It was intermission. That was about half over. Gone with the Wind's a long movie. Anyway, I didn't even know it. It seemed like it ended in an okay place for me. So anyway, after that, I filled out your dream sheets on where you want to go, where you want to be transferred to or whatever, and I put in everything from the East Coast so I could get away from the West Coast because I wanted to travel. Anyway, my first assignment was the USS Nitro, an ammunition ship out of Davisville, Rhode Island, was our home port. And so when I got back there, the first day I got back to Rhode Island, flew into Providence. Providence was not just a few miles to Davisville, the base. And I got in the middle of the worst snowstorm they'd had in 30 years in Rhode Island. So it was quite a thing. Surprise transportation was even running. I took a bus out to the base.
How all 30 of you flew across together? Like how many people flew together?
No,
to get
I was
there?
by myself.
Or how did the rest of you all get there?
No, nobody else was with me.
Selected to
I
do
was,
it?
I
You were
was,
the only one from
I
your
was the
boot
only
camp?
one going, yeah,
Wow.
to that place, to the ship, yeah. So when I got there, got checked in and everything, the next morning, the chow hall was under 3 and 4 foot of snow. So we couldn't even get to the front door. So my first experience with a snow shovel, we had to dig a path to the front door of the chow hall so the whole base could eat, really. So I was out there. I was new. I was a recruit. I mean, just after recruit, I was just starting out. So the lowest. So they just put me to work. Anyway, that day, and then my ship wasn't in port. It hadn't got back from its last assignment. Well, I don't even know where it was. But anyway, they put me up in the barracks there. I think I had to spend about 2 weeks before the ship was due to get back in. And so I learned a new game called Man or Mouse. It's a 3-card card game, 3-card game. And anyway, I learned. One guy from Earl, New Jersey, tall, slim, skinny, but a black guy. He taught me. Of course, he knew how to play. He'd probably played it all his life. But anyway, he taught me. But he didn't win any more than, we played for money, of course. He didn't win any more than I did. So either he taught me good, or of course I'd played poker with my uncles and cousins all my life. So I knew a little bit about it. It was poker hand with only 3 cards. And okay, after that, my ship got in, went on board ship. In fact, Davisville, Rhode Island is just right across Newport Bay from Newport, Rhode Island, which is the big U.S. sub base. All the East Coast subs were home ported in Newport. So we were right across the bay from them. And another interesting thing was when Ken was on his ship, he was home ported the same place, Davisville, in Rhode Island, on the carrier he was on. It was a helicopter carrier, I think, at the time he was on.
Did he put in for that spot?
He wasn't in that early.
No, I had already, no, he wasn't there at the time. He didn't join until 2 or 3 years later after I had already been in. So, but his ship was home ported in the same place. Anyway, the ammo ship I was on, right after I got on board, they got their orders to go to Germany. So we offloaded, and our orders were to go pick up old World War II ammo left over from the war. They had just thousands and thousands of rocket motors. You know, you've seen these big launch tubes on the news and all that stuff that shoot out about 40, you know, just like that. Well, the motors that drove those projectiles they're just old, and the containers were, the wooden containers that they were contained in were falling apart, rotting. So they couldn't use this stuff anywhere. And big armor projectiles for howitzers and big guns. We picked up a lot of those projectiles left over for World War I. We picked them up in 2 places. We went into Nordenham, which was up on the Baltic Sea in Germany, seacoast, and then we went inland on about another 20 miles up the Elbe River to another base and picked up more ammo.
Was it
Or people.
German or American?
No, it was American leftover, all American stuff left over.
People physically pick them up, or you put them on a Jeep or something, or what happened? How did
Our ship had booms and winches and stuff, and they would, these big, like you've seen these orange crates harvesting, that they harvest oranges in. They're just about a 4x4 wood crate about 3 feet high. These motors and everything were in those, and they would lift them off the freight train and set them on our deck. And me physically carried hundreds of them to the elevator. We had a freight elevator that went down, or on our ship went down 3 levels. We had three levels of holes, and we would,
like the random ones that weren't in the boxes?
yeah, or even that a lot of the boxes were just disintegrating, so we just picked the motors up, rocket motors up. They were still in a sealed can, just like a food can, only it was about so long, so big around. And we did that for, I think we were there in Germany for about 10 days, 10 or 12 days. And then we headed to Plymouth, England. It was on the English Channel down in the lower part of England. We got there and we spent about 3 or 4 days there for Liberty, just R&R. So everybody got a chance to go out and see the town, see some of England. And my camera, I had an Argus C3, was a 36 exposure roll of film in the camera, and I took pictures everywhere, and went all around the town, and it was on a sea coast, so it had a lot of beach areas and stuff. And I I thought I'd use the roll up, and then until I got back on board ship and we were headed home to Earl, New Jersey, and I think I kept advancing my film, and it kept advancing, and not supposed to past 36. When I got to 40, I says, something's wrong. The film never caught in the camera, so I didn't have one picture of England. So anyway, I got to reuse the film though. I hooked it up and used it. But yeah, that was a disappointment, because I had a lot of pictures of the town, Plymouth, and pictures of England. I did have some postcards, but that kind of stuff, but still wasn't the same. Anyway, on our way back, I don't know if this ought to be on film or not. On our way back, of course it's long enough ago now, across the Atlantic, we dumped all of the ammunition, all of that
That you just
projectiles and all those rocket motors and everything that we'd picked up in Germany. We dumped it, threw it over the side.
Wow.
So that was the whole purpose, like just you had to get rid of it?
Yeah.
Because they couldn't be used, the engines were too old?
No, it was too old, too unstable.
Wow.
And yeah, and of course they wouldn't ever do anything like that now. Well, at least they.
Well,
They still do stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have 2 friends in the army. They do stuff like that all the time. Only in other countries, though.
Oh yeah. Well, we were in another country too, halfway across the
Oh
Atlantic.
yeah.
international waters.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Anyway, so we got back to Earl, New Jersey. Was an ammo base. We just pulled in to reload our holes with our U.S. and regular ammo, because we had emptied our ship, went over, picked up all that junk, and then threw it over. So we were empty. So we had to go to Earl, New Jersey, ammo base.
No one wondered why you came back empty?
Nobody knew anything about it. Anyway, they just started loading us up with our regular ammo, and then actually about the second night we were there, this was in 1963.
So he's
Six-
Grandpa's about the same age as Jake and Joe Alley at the same point.
Yeah, I was 18. And President Kennedy was the president, and he declared a embargo of Cuba, 1963. He froze all enlistments. Nobody could, if you were scheduled to get out of any military, anywhere, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, whatever, anyway, they froze everything because they didn't know what they were getting into. They may have gone to war with Russia because Russia was loading Cuba up with missiles, and Cuba's only like 90 miles away from the Florida coast. So Kennedy said, no, you're not going to do that. Yeah. And so we loaded up, headed for Cuba.
Dan, just for a cute little end, what about the guy? What about
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a guy from Texas that was getting out the next day,
Oh.
and his parents from Texas had come to Earl, New Jersey
Oh,
to
no.
pick him up. So he was frozen, he couldn't,
Yeah, they should
and
know.
he had no idea how long. It was just an indefinite freeze on enlistments. So they had to leave, and he had, and then a few days, about a week later, he re-enlisted for another 4 years
Oh.
instead of getting out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so we were down off Cuba now, and we were an ammo ship. It's a auxiliary ship. We were offloading ammo at sea, where two ships just go up alongside each other, steaming about 12 knots, which is about 50 miles an hour in the water. And we shoot lines across, and then heavy cables, and then big steel cables between the two ships, and they would transfer, again, these like 4x4 boxes of wooden boxes of whatever material. We would transfer the ammo from ship to ship. So we did that for a couple of destroyers off of Cuba, and we had to take on oil, black oil. It was just for fuel, is what we used. So we had to go along and do the same thing. They would haul a big 4-inch hose and connect it to our ship, and it was connected to their ship, and they would pump that oil into our tank, into our gas tanks. That's what they would do. And every once in a while, if the guys that are steering the ship don't do it just right, they go like this, and more than one of those hoses has broken and sprayed black oil all over the side. I saw a couple of ships that were like that. Really a mess.
Did it get on any of the guys?
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, anybody that was up on deck.
That's
But
horrible.
we never broke hoses as far as I knew, but I've seen other ships that had come up alongside us to take on ammo that had previously take on fuel, and they got it good. Some of them, yeah. But we separated cables one time, just a box of ammo going across, and I transferred later in the career, a year later or so. You've seen those in a square box highlining ship to ship. That's how they transferred personnel. It was just a big square metal cage about 6 foot tall, that hooked to that steel cable. You sat in it, buckled in with your life jacket on, and they would transfer you over to the other ship. And I did that once, only once. That was enough. It was a little scary, but after that Cuba lasted I don't know, we were down there probably less than a month, and Russia says, okay, we're not gonna bring any more missiles into Cuba, and we're gonna take the ones we got there out, and they did. So that pretty much ended the Cuban crisis, missile crisis that Kennedy was involved with Gorbachev, I think it was, of Russia. And then after that, we went back to Puerto Rico. We pulled into Puerto Rico for Liberty. Spent a couple days. I went on board I went off the ship once, I think, just to tour a castle or something that was there in Puerto Rico, but I didn't. Puerto Rico wasn't the favorite spot. What I remember most about Puerto Rico is the ship pulling into the narrow bay. You could smell it before you could see it. The decomposing jungle, I guess is what the only thing you could think of. It's just, it smelled like land or dirt. I don't know, it was really an unusual smell. After you were there for a while, you got used to it. It didn't bother you, but you could really tell you were coming into land. I can see now why old time sailors could tell there was land there even if they couldn't see it, because you could really smell Puerto Rico, and it was just the decomposing jungle, really. It was just because it was so lush and damp. It's always damp, raining there, and it's just a lot of at those in the 60s. What? Go faster. Okay.
You're fishing?
A little faster. Okay.
At what point did you know you got seasick? What's that?
Oh, right after I went on board.
And so tell us a little bit about that. How often were you throwing up and stuff like that?
First off, yeah, as soon as I got on board the Nitro and first time we headed out to sea, I knew I was going to be seasick.
Did you happen to go ocean fishing at all as a
Yeah,
kid?
and got sick.
So you did have a hint to that.
Yeah. Anyway, but the bigger ship, it's a different type. It's a roll and pitch and whatever. But anyway, so I didn't know. But yeah, if I went to sea and it was calm the first day out, or first 2 days, I didn't get the feeling too bad at all. But if it was rough, as soon as we left the breakwater of the port to where the ship was up and down and sideways, I got sick, throwing up, wanting to lay down and die sick.
And you did that for 9 years.
Yeah,
Like,
almost.
can't comprehend
Almost.
that.
Like when we would go to sea and be at sea for 20 days or so. First 2 or 3 days were the worst, and then it would ease up some. Mm-hmm. But I never really felt good.
There are always people
at
around
sea.
who's sick.
Oh yeah,
In the buckets or in the toilets or
over the side? Over the side, mostly when they were available. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it was especially new people. But anyway, okay, after Cuba, we got orders to the Mediterranean. So we spent 20-something days going through the Straits of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean. The countries I visited was Spain, Mallorca, the island of Spain, and never got on the mainland. France, 2 different ports in Italy and Greece and Lebanon, a couple of islands or Rhodes, Greece, it's a big island. After Lebanon, we went to I went to Morocco. Kentra, I think was, or Kentra was the capital at the time, I don't know, of Morocco. So I went there. And then while I was in the Mediterranean, I applied for the Naval Academy, to go to the Naval Academy. I had to go through a whole battery of tests and everything, and my captain approved. And when I was in the Mediterranean, I got orders to the prep school for the Naval Academy. It was like 6 weeks in Bainbridge, Maryland. So I got to fly from Morocco to the Azores, and from the Azore Islands into Earl, New Jersey. And then from New Jersey, I went to Bainbridge, Maryland for the prep school for the academy. Well, I was there for about 3 weeks maybe, and decided I didn't want to be an officer if I was going to have to do the things that it was required of officers. For one thing, you didn't get to know anybody other than other officers. No fraternization. You just couldn't hang around anybody that wasn't an officer. And I said, I don't think I like this. So I says, I'm withdrawing my application for the academy and the prep school. So they said, oh, okay. They tried to talk me out of it, but I was firm. I just said, nope, I don't want to do it. So I went and did my dream sheet. Every time you get transferred, you fill out a sheet where you want to go, what you want to do. So I filled out to go back to the west coast. I'd had enough of the East Coast, I guess. I wanted to go back closer to home. So everything I filled out was for the West Coast. So I got orders to Long Beach, to a minesweep squadron. One particular boat, the USS Pivot, which was MSO 461, was its designation. And we were so small, the only wooden hulled ships left in the Navy. We were so small, so short, that they wouldn't let us travel overseas by ourselves. We had to travel by squadron in case of problems. So, in fact, we couldn't even get across the ocean without refueling. So, on our fantail, which is the back part of the ship, they put a huge 500 or 1,000 gallon rubber bladder that was filled with diesel fuel.
Whoa.
So they could pump from that into our tanks on board the ship.
That's
so that
crazy.
we could even get to Hawaii, which was about halfway, or not quite halfway, I think. Anyway, we had to refill again in Midway Island on the way to Japan. We made my first Westpac cruise to Sasebo, Japan. It's on can't remember the island, but it's the largest lower island.
Does that relate to the Midway ship?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I was there, took some tours, enjoyed Japan for a while. And from Sasebo, Japan, I went to Keelung, Taiwan, China, and spent a few days anchored in the bay in Taiwan, which was interesting. I took a couple of tours of the countryside and stuff, and that was where I had my dress uniform, my gabardine dress uniform made. All the Navy official stuff was all wool, but I had a gabardine that looked just like,
And you still have it?
and I still have it. I can still get into it.
Wow. I thought you were gonna say you got a tattoo there or something.
Nope, no tattoos.
What's a gabardine? Is that a type of?
It's a material, yeah. It's like it's a heavy
Canvas.
tweak, almost
Yeah,
like
kind of
canvas, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite as heavy as a heavy canvas, but yeah, it's a real durable material. And
Well, Jolie wore it too,
yeah,
right? That one that Jolie
Yeah.
wore for Halloween that one time.
Oh, yeah, you've seen it.
yeah, and but anyway, and after Taiwan, we came back home.
When did you buy the bike?
That was when I was on the Marcab after my next overseas trip.
That was number one.
That's later.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, that's later.
After we were married.
I was gonna say, yeah, what year in the Navy did you meet Grandma?
And when I was 1964,
When you were stationed in,
Long Beach.
So you
I
came
was
home
still-
for like the weekend or something, or on leave?
Yeah, no, on leave. I met Mom or Lois on, I had re-enlisted for 6 years in the Navy. And I was home on 30 days leave, so I had 30 days.
can I say something?
Sure.
You know how you enlisted for 4 years.
Well,
Correct.
3 years and
Well,
something.
you enlisted for 4 years, right? But
Mhm.
then at certain point, which made it shorter, they offered you the 6 year. Is that right? Something
No.
like that. Explain that.
I went in the Navy when what they called a kiddie cruise because I was underage, so I was a kid. So when I turned 21, the day I turned 21, I was to be discharged,
Oh. I see.
and that's why it was shorter than 4 years. It was 3 years, 9 months about that. So I re-enlisted for 6 years at that time. So it's the reason I spent 9 years and 3 months and something or whatever in the Navy.
So how much, your leave was about how many weeks?
That was 30 days. I had,
That's all?
So you guys just got to know each other within those 30 days and decided there to get married?
yep. I was home on that leave, at my parents' place in Modesto. I was hanging around with my best friend from high school, Dave Knowles, and he was also Ken's good friend too. But
Did Ken already know Sandy at that point or no?
yeah,
We all knew Ken.
Lois, Ken, Sandy, all knew each other. They went to the same church
And Rita.
and youth group.
Okay.
And Rita was my close friend.
Oh yeah, Rita too, my sister. Yeah,
At the time. And gradually we met Lynn and David.
yeah.
And I guess time by time, they all believed in Jesus through the time we knew them.
Yeah, but anyway, Dave,
Knowles.
Dave Knowles, you know, my friend, best friend, he witnessed to me one night. We were just hanging out. I was showing him my car. I had a '63 Comet with a floor shift and a nice V8 in it. That was fast.
Yeah, that's a small car with a V8.
Yeah. And anyway, I was just showing him the car, and he was telling me about Jesus and about God. I'd never been to church, ever. And I just bid that night blew him off. I didn't know what he was talking about. But he gave me a tract, 4 Spiritual Laws from Campus Crusade for Christ. And the next day, it was the next day or the day after, I stopped at a park, read it, and said, yeah, that's what I want too.
Crying day. A great day.
Yep.
Remember.
Anyway, accepted the Lord by myself and apart from the tract.
In the comment.
Yeah. In the what?
In the Comet?
Yeah. I was sitting in the car at the park in Modesto. And then, I don't know, that must have been during the week, like a Thursday or something. So I went to church that Sunday at the church that Lois and Ken and Sandy.
The Loma Grace Brethren.
Right, Loma Grace Brethren. Anyway, and I went forward in the church that night.
And Rita and I were up in the balcony, and we saw you.
And talked to the pastor, and he asked me, you know, why I'd come forward and everything. And so I told him. He was satisfied. So because it was a good thing, because Lois would never even dated me without being a Christian. So glad that happened first.
And so you were like 20?
21.
21.
Just after I turned 21. So, and I don't know, you said you kept track. I didn't keep track. We saw each other, what, 7 times?
Well, it was 7 to 9 times, but he was
Before I asked her to marry me.
He was in his house. He was in his house
Crazy.
at his home family, petting the bunny. I know exactly where he was standing. I can picture it. He's holding that little bunny, and Rita or your mom introduced us. I didn't know his family really either, the parents or anything. I'm not even sure I'd been to your house very often. Yeah. And I remember turning around and walking out and saying, I've got to get to know him. And then later we talked, and that was exactly what he said also.
That's cute.
And then he called me the next day, and we went out and group things with people. We went to a play. That was our first time to do
Sunday
anything.
school,
With
church social.
Several things, and then he had to leave. Well, that was in October. We met, and the end of October he had to go back to his new duty, which was
A school in Waukegan, Illinois, near Chicago.
And so we were sitting at the end of my driveway in Empire, and he asked me if I'd marry him, and I said, well, I'll give you my answer tomorrow. And he called me after he was driving away on the trip on his, None of my family knew him.
And she said
I-
yes.
Yeah.
Did you say
None
no?
of my family knew him. If you ever hear Sandy or Janet's side of the story, they all go, we didn't even know what Lois was talking about, what she was doing. And so,
Well, Sandy was probably caught up in her own person, and then.
but she didn't. She and Ken married 3 years later.
Yeah,
They were good friends.
Yeah, they
We all were
just
good
Yeah.
friends with Ken. He was the clown class, the class clown at Sunday school.
Literally. the
Everybody
clown
loved
lady.
him.
Yeah.
So
He
then,
and I took that clown cake class together.
really?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
So you guys were engaged for.
From
We bought the engagement ring when he came back halfway
From Chicago?
in February. He
Okay.
drove back. Was this when you ruined your car
all the way home.
Get back too
You
fast.
drove from
We
Chicago?
got engaged and we
Oh.
bought
46 hours.
Whoa.
By
Straight
yourself?
Straight through. No, there's 3 of us.
Oh.
We drove straight through. The only time we stopped was for gas
Whoa.
and to buy bread and some mayonnaise and some meat.
That's
and the guy in
crazy.
the back seat made the sandwiches and passed them.
Passed him forward?
Passed them forward, and it took us 46 hours from Chicago to Modesto.
That's
California.
pretty good.
We were traveling. And then anyway, on the way back, I got into Rollins, Wyoming, and wrecked the car.
Aw.
I hit they had these the only traffic lights they had were hanging in the middle of the intersection,
Yeah.
about so big square like this with the lights on it. I had never seen those things before.
Oh, wow.
Being from California,
Yeah.
they didn't have, and I
They
just
still
missed.
have those.
I just missed the light. Didn't even see the light.
Mm.
And I hit a broadside at a 56 Buick, I think it was, a big old 4-door. Just I don't think it did anything to
Wow.
that. It messed my front end up.
Oh man.
So I had to leave the car there
Oh, wow.
in Rawlins, and I took a bus to Casper to get a flight. I had to get a flight back to Chicago to my school.
You were obviously driving alone this time.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I was driving alone
You said back, you mean back to Chicago.
back to Chicago. Yeah, yeah, and we insurance took care of it,
Oh.
Well,
and
that's
they had it towed to the repair place, had it fixed, and the guy that owned the shop, it was a pretty big shop. Quite a few guys worked there, and he drove it for like 3 weeks, a month after they fixed it, but because I wasn't coming to pick it up because I was still at school.
That's funny.
So I had to finish school, then I had to fly back to Casper, pick the car up, and then I drove. At first I wasn't going to, I had gotten a hotel that day, I was gonna spend the night. That brings to mind, yeah, I checked into the hotel, had a suitcase, checked into the hotel, went to get my car, picked up the car, went back to the hotel, went up to my room, and somebody had been through my suitcase. And in that time, it was just probably an hour, I could tell that it wasn't all messed up or anything. They didn't want anybody to know, but somebody had been through my suitcase. There wasn't anything in it that was
Nothing
important.
was missing?
Nothing was missing, but somebody had been through it,
Wow.
and I said,
I'm not gonna stay here.
yeah, that's right, I'm not staying here. I got in the car and headed out.
Wow.
And I got into Wyoming, someplace in the western. This was late in the day, or not too late. It was in the afternoon. But anyway, I got so sleepy I couldn't continue. So I just pulled off the road. It was blowing snow and really windy. And I says, I'm just gonna sleep for a while. Yeah, I slept for just a little while. I woke up freezing to death. So I just took off, turned the heater on so I could stay warm.
Wow.
And made it back into Long Beach. That's where I was going back in.
Where, by the way, the whole time we knew each other, we never lived in the same city, ever. He, cause he was stationed somewhere else the whole time. But, when's your stories of when you got to be a driver and all your hitchhiking stories? What time period is that?
Well, I hitchhiked back to, okay, I went on leave when I was on the Nitro in Davisville, Rhode Island. I didn't have any money, but I had like 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks leave, so I says, I'm just gonna hitchhike to Fresno or to Modesto. So I got a military hop from Providence, the base there at it was called Quonset Point, from Navy military base there to Pensacola, Florida. I started out with $25. That's all I had on me. But I was making it to Modesto. So I started.
Don't take lessons from this.
Yeah. I got a bus
Too
from
late.
Pensacola, Florida to Lake Charles, Louisiana. From Lake Charles, Louisiana, I hitchhiked to Modesto. And I wasn't really out. I was in uniform. I wasn't out in the road over 10, 15 minutes at the most, probably 10 minutes. In those days,
Wow.
everybody would pick up a military guy, pick up a uniform.
Cool.
That's cool.
And I got some really long rides. I got one from somewhere in Louisiana into Big Springs, Texas,
Whoa.
which was a long way with a trucker.
I was gonna say trucker.
Yep, and then I got another ride from another trucker right after I got out in Texas to White Sands. He was going to White Sands Navy proving the missile base in White Sands, New Mexico. So I got a ride there. I got out on the road. He let me off at the road that went into the base because he was going to the base. He had a load for the base, and again I got a ride. I can't remember. This was a guy in a pickup truck. That's all I remember. I can't even remember how far I went. But this next ride was he was going up 99. He said, "I go right through Modesto." He was going Sacramento or somewhere, and he says, "I'll hop in, whatever." So I got in and got a ride with him all the way. Dropped me off at 9th Street, Modesto. I walked to a phone booth, called my folks. I had a dime left. Enough to make the phone call. That's it. It was a good. I think I had 2 meals, or I bought some food with my $25. I had to buy a bus ticket from Pensacola to Lake Charles out of that 25. I didn't have a whole lot of money left, so, but I ended up with a dime when I got into Modesto.
Wow.
Enough to make a phone call.
Wow.
And then when I was there, I had money in the bank, savings. I didn't have a checking or anything, but I left too soon to wait to get it out of the bank in Rhode Island, so I just took off from there. But when I was in Modesto, I withdrew all the money that was in the account, so it was only like $200 anyway, because at that time, I made $78 a month.
Wow.
Of course, everything else was paid for. All your food, medical,
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything was paid for, but they didn't pay guys who were E2s, which was your E1, you're a recruit. When you get out of boot camp, you're in E2. Anyway, I made E6 before actually the last 3 years I was in E6, and I was running our shop on board the repair ship, the Marcab I was on.
That was after we're married.
Yeah.
Dan, I think we're running out of time, but you told me about that one guy that actually you guys even stayed in a hotel.
Oh yeah.
When he was hitchhiking one time.
Yeah, I got a ride with a guy, traveling salesman, I guess. But anyway, he was on his. This was when I was going back to Rhode Island. I was going back to Rhode Island, and I got a ride from Flagstaff, Arizona, and it was snowing with this guy, and he was going into Pennsylvania all the way.
Whoa.
And he dropped me off. And on the trip we stayed in a hotel. He paid for the hotel, and we stayed. It was the same room. I was a little weird. That was a little leery about, but anyway. Two beds, yeah. And and that was fine. And then he dropped me off at the airport in. I can't remember now.
He probably bought you some meals too.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But I had money then. That was different. But
Okay.
this was on the way back, and
So you
anyway.
hitchhiked back too?
Huh? Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't have enough money to get a flight.
Wow.
So, but I did have enough money to get in Pennsylvania. I flew from can't even remember the town now. It was one of the big towns. It was a big airport. Maybe Philadelphia. Anyway, I flew from there into Providence, Rhode Island to get back to the ship.
Was hitchhiking more normal though?
Oh
then?
yeah, there was a lot of people, a lot of guys, and everybody got picked up, especially if you were in uniform.
But my parents most certainly would not approve of hitchhiking. Just to show you a mindset of the general public.
Was it fear of being injured though, or just it looked?
More the fear of the person you're picking up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
being injured by them. Yeah,
Say it again.
hitchers being injured or having a problem with the one you're picking up, the hitchhiker.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
that episode of the Twilight Place.
Twilight Zone.
Wasn't there?
Yeah,
The hitchhiker
that's-
killer was that hatchet.
Oh.
This
Oh.
lady asked,
Yeah.
she picked up a hitchhiker, yeah, and she asked, yeah, I always pick up hitchhikers. What's the chances of picking up a serial killer?
What's the chances that we're both psychopaths?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the chance of picking up another shooter?
Yeah. Right. So anyway, but that's an overall basic of my career. I spent
Of his career before we married, because then you were in the Navy 5 more years.
from 65 to 69, 70
That's right.
actually 70 when I got out. But in those years, I made 3 more 6-month cruises to the Orient while we were married.
Well, his wifey lived in Alameda and took no trips.
Yeah, except home.
I drove a lot in those days, and I did drive back to my parents' house quite a bit.
Yeah.
Did you have a job too?
I did several different jobs. But yeah, very last bit of time, I babysat my brother Raymond's little kids.
It was an E5
Oh,
when
so
I
you're
got
making
when we got married.
pretty
So
good money.
We
Yeah.
were wealthy then.
I-
No, we had Navy housing. It cost $75 a month.
something I don't know.
Wow.
55. It was
Oh.
$55 a month. But a
And
lot
that's
of
in the
people,
Bay Area.
that was a poor,
Wow.
it was a
Yeah, in
poorer
Alameda.
level of living.
Yeah, it's like a
I
apartment.
totally fine though.
It
That
was
when
apartments that were
Brazil-
built
that
during
was
the
poor.
war as barracks for the military.
Whoa.
And they converted them into housing.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I was born and lived there the first 10 months of her life.
Yep.
Why I have a navel instead of a belly button?
What?
Born in a naval hospital.
Oh.
I guess you haven't heard that since
No.
you're old enough to hear it.
That's funny.
And they tore the hospital down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our housing.
Yeah.
Because
Just
we all
because
took
it did
we all took that trip. We all took that trip
Yeah.
some years back. And it was all gone. I actually petitioned against the captain of the whole Navy to keep our housing.
The base.
I
Yeah.
did
That's funny.
No, I wrote up to the high ones. I actually have those letters.
Wow.
Petition.
Yeah, petition for, we went around and got getting
Don't
signatures from
remember
all.
you doing that.
I was with you on some of it, sure.
That you were working.
Well, some I
That's
was.
probably true. It's logically you would have been.
So then, when did you guys move to Alameda?
65, right after the day
We-
after we got married.
Okay, so
2 days.
was that when did you propose? So you asked her to marry her, then you went to Chicago, and then you brought the
He
ring back
He
with
came
you.
back.
No, we
February?
bought it in Modesto together.
Okay.
We got engaged February 26th.
It was February, yeah. I was just looking at those
But
pictures.
when did we buy the rings? You didn't come back between that time.
I must have.
I don't know. We'd have to think on that.
But anyway,
Oh,
we
I-
bought the rings together. I know that.
Mhm. And then he gave it to me, and
Then
we
you-
told our parents, and my mom said, well, that she'd invite
you off.
he'd invite his parents over, and we'd have a little celebration. And she said, but if we have this celebration, you're getting married. I was only, I was only 18. And it shocked them all. I didn't even know
Alec,
that.
can you imagine being
I
married
didn't
right
even.
now?
I didn't think about anything.
Yeah.
She
He
was
asked
in
me to
love.
marry him.
You were in love.
Yeah, I
So
guess
then- What month did you guys get married in?
July.
July.
And then after that, you moved to Alameda, and you're back in.
We lived
Yeah,
there
and
until
I-
70, until I got
I
out of the service. Oh my God. Get him!
That's a year and a half, that's an hour and a half away from my parents.
Yeah, so
And my parents and his parents lived about 5 miles
okay.
apart, which
We
was a
went
long
to
time,
the-
distance in those days.
Yes.
we went to Modesto fairly regular.
Yep.
But we had some interesting neighbors at times. You want to tell him? No, okay, you better not.
Let's not talk
The drunk neighbors.
The neighbors below us.
Boom, boom. Oh.
Yeah, no, they,
Which
no,
one?
They were on the
up,
bottom.
they
Yeah.
He used to pound his broom up on our
on the ceiling.
It was like friends.
And, yeah.
But
Would
anyway,
you jump
But
on
I
the
made
floor
it-
tap dance? That
Yeah.
like your tapping
Yeah.
shoes?
I made a decision
it's
to
still
never
not
drink
finance
based on our neighbors. Because I hadn't grown up around drinking, and we were totally against our drinking. And,
We barked at.
one night, I heard my neighbor and her husband walking. We shared the same narrow stairway, and then one house apartment went that way and one that way. And I might add that neighbor's house was filled with roaches. And God spared us. Everyone in our entire complex of 8 all had roaches all the time. We had one roach get in our house one time, and I said, "We're getting him. We're not going out of this place till
You
we
told
find
Dan to
him."
leave, and that was.
But yeah, one night I visited the lady across the hall. I'm gonna finish my little story about in a minute.
Yep.
And we were just talking, and we talked so long. Our husbands were in the Navy, and they were working away, and we talked so long we didn't get up and turn the lights on. And then maybe she said, "Let's get some water." And she turned the lights on, we walk in, and the roaches were covered all over every counter space and everything. And we had our door open. We kept our doors open between us a lot of times during the day.
Ugh.
God just protected, not totally. I always considered that God protected us. But I was gonna say, one night we were in our apartment that actually must have had very thin walls. And I heard her coming up the stairs laughing, and they were, to them, having a great time. And I said, no, I will not drink. That was not them. That was the drinking them, and that was a total turn off to me, personally. Which God used, and that was good.
And that's when you're 18?
yep,
Well, I
Or maybe
turned
19.
19 the month we got married. So,
so she was 19. Okay, we better do some business.
yeah, we should take a short little break and let everyone stretch.